Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Morning, good morning, good morning.
The song you just heard was "We Belong" by Magnetic North um, and Teo Na featuring And One. So that's a fantastic song. It was referred to us by Nebula Lee of the Indo-American Center. So welcome, everyone. This is the Civic Lab. You know us, we're do tank. We don't just think about it, we do it, changing communities in Chicago. We've got what's called the Power Institute, where you can get trained to win all of just a treasure trove of resources to help organizations uh, do everything from soup to nuts and figure out how to, again, change our communities. And then we're very proud of our publications, and most notably, now we have Chicago is Not Broke. It's really a great expose on how the city finances really work and what we can do about it. So check out Chicago is Not Broke. It's our premier publication. We're going to cover a lot today in our agenda um, about grassroots fundraising, give you some basic concepts. We're going to go over the do's and don'ts with dealing with uh, funders, with donors and individuals specifically. Tell you about cultivation and stewardship and some practices. And then we're going to go into the world of virtual fundraising, including crowdsourcing and just the theory behind it. And then talk about special events, both in person and virtual. So again, please come in, check in, and your name, organization, and your role. And if you want to talk about how you feel now, where you are, what's alive for you. So I'm Philip Thomas. Let me introduce or have her introduce herself. Ahmed Johnson, my partner in non-crime, and take it away, Ahmed. Well, can you hear? Can everyone hear?
All right, how's that? Everybody can hear me now, right?
Yeah, we couldn't hear
Okay, I was muted. Excuse me. So, welcome everybody. Good morning to you. I'm glad to be here. As I was saying, what's up for me right now is the weather. It is getting warm. I am so excited. Spring is on our heels and summer will be here to knock us out shortly. And I love summer, so I can't wait for it. Just to give you a little bit, I'm sorry, I think I even advanced our slide a little there, just to tell you a little bit about me. I'm the founder and CEO of a nonprofit school called Ubuntu Institute for Global Learning. That's my latest endeavor. I have been in organizational management, fund development for over 30 plus years as a fund manager. I've also been a development director. I've raised funds on the local level as well as the national level for organizations. And probably my experience of fundraising, I've probably raised close to 70 million in individual major gifts and foundation grants. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm glad to be here to share my wealth of knowledge and experience in the field. So welcome.
And similarly, I'm Philip Thomas. I've held many roles in nonprofits, fundraising, doing program work. I did fundraising for many different kinds of organizations and coalitions. I was on the board of the Association for Fundraising Professionals, the treasurer of the Chicago chapter, raised probably about $50 million over about 25 years of fundraising. And then I went to uh, the other side of the table, working for grant makers, Woods Fund in Chicago, Chicago Community Trust, where I ran a community development program. So I've been on the other side looking at many different kinds of requests. I've also consulted with many organizations on individual giving and campaigns specifically. So between Amma and I, we've seen a lot. We've also learned that many of you have many experiences. And so we're looking for a really robust conversation today about how we can all get better at this very important area of fundraising. So again, we're dealing with this complex critter called a nonprofit. We're only touching on one part of the ecosystem today, the fundraising and administrative part, very important bucket in what we're learning about. So that's where we are to give you the context of what we're doing today. It's important to understand that it's important to understand that this part of funding sources, understanding that is really important. You want to be as diversified as you can, not more than 50 to 60% in any particular area, because it makes you vulnerable to disruption. One, if you're overly relying on one funder or group of funders and that source shuts down, changes course, you could really have a real problem. And that's why individual giving in particular lets you expand the amount of options and resources available to you. So that is the context for why we're talking about this today. And if we're talking about, well, what is grassroots fundraising? It's essentially asking individuals for money, one-on-one, distinct from what you have to do with foundation grants. Has anyone in the chat, if you could put in the chat, whether or not you've ever done any grassroots fundraising, individual fundraising, either with the organization you're with, or maybe some organization you have another affiliation with, like a school alumni or church. So just kind of just say yes or no, yes, but limited, that kind of thing. And if you've done a lot, we'd like to know. So individuals are by far the largest support for nonprofits in America. I mean, we concentrate a lot on funders, government, foundations that are large because they're large concentration pots of money that represent distinct targets that we go after. Understanding, though, that a lot of people are going after those same targets. And so for most nonprofits, individuals are, as you can see from this graph, much more significant as a collective than any one funder could be in terms of the whole system. So does anyone have any kind of thought about why that might be true? Why might this statistic be true? Why is individual giving so large? Any thoughts about that?
You can put your answers in the chat, or you can
actually
answer if you want to just give us the answer.
Well,
what makes up that large group of individuals, that individual giving? What is the largest group that would be doing individual giving? Think about it. They do it on a weekly basis.
They do it on Sunday. Some places do it on Saturday.
Right. They do it on a weekly basis.
It's churches.
There we go.
Churches.
Religious
Churches are the ones that churches, alumni from schools, but churches in particular. And why churches? Because they ask often, they ask in different ways, You know, you can give to the general fund, or you can give to the missionary, or you can give to the building campaign, or even the pastor's jet. You know, they give you a different way, even within the same service. And they're unapologetic about asking because it's tied to their mission. And they do it often and regularly and give you different levels.
Absolutely.
So, and as you point out, the country has a strong history of philanthropy, and that goes back. I could do a long talk on the history of philanthropy in giving in America. It's really quite interesting, but a lot of it has been church-based and school-based, but religious organizations are a big part of that. So that's, again, another reason for us to focus on it and take the best practices.
Absolutely. So Philip alluded to it just a little bit now. Why do donors give? We know they give to make a difference. Okay, they give to a fund that helps families post bond for loved ones, or have immigrant families, gives funds to immigrant families to get up on their feet. So people would give money to make a difference if there was a cause like that, right? They give to demonstrate their commitment to an ideology, a political party, a religious faith, social justice organization, okay? Or they respond to an invitation from someone they respect, someone that they hold in esteem. So they want to do exactly what that person is doing. So they would do it for prestige, or to be in the same group or the same club as that individual or individuals, right? Or they join with others they know and trust, family, friends, a group of friends who come together, maybe to do mutual aid for a project or a program or a cause, and they ask other people to join them. Okay, so these are people that you know, right? Or they want to get involved with the organization or their cause, right? They believe strongly in the organization's mission, the purpose, and the goal. So that's why they want to give to that organization. Also, the one that always gets me is people give because their emotions are stirred or their heartstrings have been touched. So think about St. Jude's. I give to St. Jude's specifically because of their message and how touching it is to help kids and help families get through hard, traumatic times. Also, Feed the Children, that's another one, or Save the Polar Bears. So there are many that, you know, that you see that come on the TV as commercials and things of that nature that people give to. And then also people give because there's a clarity of the organization's need for resources. It's very clear and they understand where the money is going. Think Red Cross, think UNICEF, okay? And then also people give because they want to receive recognition. They want respectful acknowledgement for their giving. They want their name on the library or a specific, your computer room, or, you know, they want that leaf on the giving tree in your organization. They want their name in your annual report, okay? So they give as a result of that. And then why don't donors give, okay? That's if they've given in the past and their gift went unacknowledged, there was not a thank you, chances are that person's not going to give again, okay? If you solicit them infrequently or poorly, so let's say you don't even solicit them on an annual basis. You might solicit them every other year, or once every 3 years, or when you do solicit them, the solicitation is poor in nature in terms of what you're asking them for, the mission, the project, the goals, why they need to give. So you need to really be explicit, and the donor has to understand, okay? Or the information was lacking about the difference their gift would make. So I'm giving you money, where's it going to? What is it gonna do? Okay, and you haven't given me any information back after I've given you money on where my money went to. So chances are I'm not gonna give that money again, okay? Or they never felt needed or wanted. You didn't engage them in the organization, in the mission, in what you're doing, in the programming. So they want to feel needed and wanted. So you have to bubble that up to the top. That's one of the reasons why donors give. Another reason is the organizations don't ask their opinion or include them in their plans or programs. Okay, donors want to be a part of the programming. Bring them in as volunteers, bring them in as thought partners, bring them in to help you develop activities and programming. They want to feel a part of what you're doing, especially if they're putting their dollars to it as well. If they don't receive direct, personalized, an appeal from somebody excited about your organization, actually inviting them to come in and be a part of it, somebody needs to be dedicated to make sure they're touching your donors at least 2 to 3 times a year. Not necessarily an ask, but in addition to an ask, you're letting them know about the programming, what impact their dollars are making in the organization. That's an impetus for them to want to give again. If you don't do that, chances are they're not going to give again. Okay, and tantamount, no one ever asked them again. Either nobody asked them, period, or nobody asked them again after they'd given. That is huge. Always ask again. These people are in the habit of giving. They want to give. They give to charity. They give to nonprofit organizations. Ask, okay? Also, don't shy away from asking them for more money. If they've already given, ask them to increase their gift and let them know what that increase in the gift, what kind of impact that would make for your organization or your constituency. Okay, and then also ask them for their networks. Do they know other people that would be interested in giving to the organization? Tap them for their networks, excuse me. And one thing to always be mindful of, and hopefully you never fall into this situation with your organizations, but it does happen, is that you have to be mindful of poor service, or if there's scandal going on in your organization, don't ignore it, because word of mouth and reputation will precede you. So those are things that you want to mitigate and take care of, or at least have a response ready for when those things are asked to you. If any questions are asked about a situation that's going on in your organization, you want to be prepared for that, okay? And put your prospective donors or current donors at ease so that they will continue to help support your organization. All right. Any questions so far? If not, what we want to do now is break you guys up into small groups. And what we want you to do is to talk about the state of your organization.
I put my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
okay.
Go ahead. I can't see everybody. Yes, go ahead.
I really want to comment on that part because I brought a funder of a huge corporation, a behemoth, to a nonprofit. And I think one thing that everybody here needs to learn is that they're not going to tell you what you're doing wrong and what is appropriate that you need to make sure you take care of because of their own internal rules of communication. But, you know, I had brought them to a nonprofit. They had given some substantial money, and we brought in another division of the company that the total sum between the two ended up being about $350K. And then one comment that the guy had was they couldn't even buy this particular thing to make them look good to their bosses, that they put this money there. And it was a small membership of something. So I won't go into details so people know who it is, but it was such a tiny amount so that they can do their right in justifying telling their bosses, yeah, we took care of them. We brought in another division. And, you know, then they engaged with us and they really created a partnership with us. And I think that was really detrimental because the CEO of that org was also very aggressive in her approach, which was a turnoff for each division. So these different leaders would come to me, sorry about the puppy in the background. They would come to me with the uncomfortable attitude. And all I could say was that she was desperate for money, but I would make these excuses. And I would talk to her about it, but that was just her nature. Mm-hmm. So that's one situation. And then I had another one where I sat on a nonprofit board. And I think it's really important that the CEO founder, my apologies, guys, that the CEO founder was so aggressive about us going through this list of funding and then doing the follow-up. And I did your question, who's been managing the relationship, you know, how often, whatever. And there was a little, I think the way she handled it was weird. But she was aggressive in the sense with her comment that said, well, they have to fund us and blah, 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 and we're right off. And then I was kind of unhappy. No, I was very unhappy because I also was a funder, a sponsor. And so that particular year, I had brought them $21,000 between myself and 2 corporations I brought in. And I didn't like the lack of respect for where someone could spend money. And so I think it's so important that the teams and these EDs or CEOs learn that you have to honor the relationship and you have to really be in gratitude. Otherwise, they could go somewhere else. And, you know, they forget that piece. And then another piece, if I could include, is that when I joined that particular board, I really wanted to be in the trenches with the people that were being impacted. I didn't want to be just someone that was fundraising. And I would constantly ask for, can you, you know, please put me in front of the women and this is what I want to do. It didn't happen. So between that conversation and my lack of receiving what I needed as a sponsor and a board member, I walked. And so they had a lot of loss there because those corporations and relationships also walked with me. Not that I brought them, but I already had them. So I just wanted to help a little bit so that people get those insights.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, because we're going to be talking about how do you cultivate and steward your individual donors. It's very important. And Letty, in this case, you were that individual. Yes, you were helping them, but they didn't cultivate and steward you appropriately. You know, and then that money will go right with the individual. She's absolutely correct.
And the big one, the one that was over 350, when those corps came back to me, unfortunately, I sent them somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because you know, I saw a lot, and it's not that things will happen, and sometimes the scandals and the poor service, sometimes whoever we are, we could be the influencer, right? Yeah. We can see things and hear things that maybe doesn't get out externally. And so then if we're concerned about our relationships and how much we care about who we bring forward, then that integrity in that relationship piece is also broken. So me personally, then I tend to pull away because I don't want my relationships to think that I'm tied to that situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, I think those are great examples of great insights. As we've talked about before, I mean, we're in a relationship business, and that's our gold. That's our treasure. And people have interlocking relationships, and you don't know who you're affecting. If you lose one person, they could be a very significant person. And so that has to go with that care and feeding of your donors and prospects. It's as much an art as it is a science. Mm-hmm. And so many of these things that we're talking about, when donors give and don't give, they're really analogous to etiquette between people. I mean, if people are ungrateful or abrasive or non-communicative, that breaks down a personal relationship. So it's similar when you're talking in this regard. It's the things that we used to call home training, right? Etiquette. I mean, it really comes down to that. And even so, we're not a part of an impersonal organization. We're trying to make it less impersonal. And that's where you get the cooperation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, please, thank you. You're welcome. Look what your money did for us. It's really that simple. It's really that simple. If you just stick to those things. There are many things you can hang on that, but if you do those simple things, you will have satisfied donors. You really will.
And also, how would you feel if you had a relationship where no one ever said thank you, or they only communicated with you when they want some more? So that's not that's not a relationship. It's like continuous, regular communication, even when I'm not asking for a particular ask.
And one more thing is, I think they need to bring the emotional stories forward of the impact of that funding. Because, you know, I'm currently working on a grant and I'm doing that. And the co-funder is super excited about us talking, you know, and then how do you engage your membership or constituents? I don't know what you call it in a nonprofit, but what do you do with them to get those stories to the funders? And so, you know, what I did is I requested like a 1 or 2 summary letter, 1 or 2 summary sentence of the impact and a 1 to 2 minute video, because I'm going to put those together and send those to the funders.
So you asked that of your program staff?
Yes.
That's right.
Of the participants, yes.
That's right.
Because they were so profoundly moved that I'm like, oh my God, we got to capture this and take this forward.
Mhm.
And I think it's just those, I think what the biggest problem here is the unknowns. You know, I put in the chat, I'm not sure how to fundraise, but yet I fundraised unknowingly. But I want to really learn more intentionally how to do those particular asks, because over the years, I've just had relationships and I'm like, hey, you got money, you know anybody's got money, or they'd call me and say, I got some money, I got to dump it, or I got to put it somewhere in Chicago, and then I'd connect. But I really want to be more intentionally knowledgeable how to do those requests when it's a verbal thing.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, let's add. Okay. So we're going to talk more about that, Letty, actually, as we move forward. We're going to talk about cultivation, stewardship, how do you ask, but, you know, and then we hope to do a grassroots fundraising like 201, where we get even deeper, major gifts, strategy sessions, briefing notes. I'm not even going to go there. That's a whole nother situation when you're going for the big money, the six-figure gifts. You know about that. So right now, let's talk amongst ourselves about your organization's individual giving muscle. Have you yourself participated in any individual giving fundraising? And what feedback has your organization received as a result of its individual fundraising efforts? Okay, so we're going to break you guys up into groups and just talk amongst yourselves, take turns, and then when you come back, we'll just do a popcorn share of what you got out of it, and somebody can talk about their organization and their, you know, their giving muscle. What do they do? Maybe Letty, you can fill us in on some more, okay? So let me break us up into groups real quick. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So, how was it? Who would like to share from your discussion in the small group just now? What's the state of your organization's individual giving muscle? Anybody would like to share? Go ahead, Letty, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Kathy was amazing. And I just wanted to jump in. Kathy Finley. So because remember what I mentioned about, and I'm sorry, I'm just really excited when it comes to money and fundraising, but she shared and gave some insights on how their approaches are. And I think she should share it here. So I just wanted to bring it up. She shared and made it more micro of their annual approaches to the funders. And then what they did, I'd love for her to share with you guys here. And then she also shared about like when she does phone call follow-ups, and then their request to talk to the ED CEO. So I'll keep quiet, but I would love her to share with you guys because I thought it was really good.
Kathy?
Okay. My boss is on this too, and she is part of it. She's very much had the vision for this as well. But we have 2 things that we're doing, that we're planning all through the year, and that is to have groups for coffee. So it's, you know, it's just underway right now, and small groups of 4 to 6, because you get up to 17 people, and then you're talking at rather than with. And we have in the group, it's a variety as well for this other part of people who are really big givers, new givers, people who started, we don't know what happened, but we kind of want to reel them back in, because we believe that and even, if I can find some people that haven't given in a while, I want to invite them too. But we believe people want to be part of us. They came in, I don't think they were disappointed, and it's just for a very short period of time, an hour or so. And then the second part is I create a list of 5 people kind of across the spectrum, high donor, to what the group I spoke to before. And I call them, set up a time for them to talk with my boss. I also establish a rapport with them at that point, and then she calls them. And I think that's pretty good.
Mhm. I love what you're talking about, what you're doing. You guys are actually describing what you would do like in the 201 phase of cultivating your donors and bringing in donors that may have given at one point in time and then engaging them back into your organization. So that means would it be a good assumption to say you have a pretty good individual donor pipeline?
I think that's a project under construction.
Okay.
Things can always be better, and we've just come out of a very tight, hard period of time. So, but what's important is that it's not just fundraising. This is the head of the organization, the executive director, who's also there and has a different perspective, because she also brings in the legal. We have 2 parts, legal and the social services, and she can wander across the whole spectrum. And that's where you get to the emotional part that Letty was talking about. Let the people know that you're making a difference and that they're making a difference. Absolutely. You're right about that.
That's huge, 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 huge. Thank you guys, Letty and Kathy. Is there anybody else that would like to add what they discussed? How do you go about with your individual giving? How was individual giving at your organization? And I'm a teacher, so I do not mind calling on folks. One more group, one more person. How about Leslie Tenorio? Leslie, how is your organization's individual giving? What do you guys do?
What I mentioned in my group is that with our donors, we implemented this newsletter where so it's a monthly newsletter, and we make sure that we have a lot of our highlights, things that we've accomplished, to kind of keep that gear going of making sure that that potential one-time donor remains more consistent as they see that things are actually working out. We would like to increase our individual donor base. I'm trying to find the right way to put this. There simply just are some difficulties in the sense that when you are in an area that is low income, there's a lot of places that are underfunded in the area. Sometimes it just does feel difficult to try to get that increase in individual donors. It's kind of like this occasional back and forth of trying to kind of see, well, what's the best place to branch out? Where do we figure out where is a place that we should be looking into for this individual donation?
So to talking about, where do you get those individuals from? How do you increase the amount of individual donors in your pipeline? Is that sort of what you're getting at, Leslie?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that next, actually. It's a perfect segue. So thank you very much. Perfect segue for where, we're talking about this individual giving muscle. Like, yes, some organizations have very well-defined pipelines, individual giving pipelines, where they've got a database of maybe 300 or more, thousands, in their database. And then we have those that are smaller. Maybe you only have 25 to 100 in your database in terms of your individual giving. It depends on the size of the organization and then your ability to grow. Okay, so we're going to talk about, where do you get those individual donors from? And then how do you keep them? And a lot of that we've already talked about, okay? But let's talk about where do we get these folks from? Okay, well, guess what? They're your colleagues. Letty, you even talked about it. You said they'd pick up the phone to call you. Hey, where can I go and give this money? You know what I'm saying? So they're your colleagues. They're your friends and family, Leslie. So looking for other people, branch out to friends and family. Okay. Also, employees. Don't underestimate your staff, and your staff should give. You know, most nonprofits have employee giving. And then also there are other organizations that have employee giving programs. Okay, so you want to get tapped into that as well. Find out where those are, what organizations have those. It's easy, especially corporate giving programs have employee giving programs. So there's ways to look into that. Also, your alumni and your constituents, depending on your constituency. Not everybody's going to be able to tap their constituency, depending on either their socioeconomic status, you know, that kind of thing. Other than that, there are a lot of organizations that can tap their alumni. Okay, so you definitely want to look at your alumni as key individual giving donors, okay? And then also you want to tap your board member networks, okay? Your board members, that's why you have them on the board, okay? One of their main responsibilities and duties is fundraising. And so they should already have that in mind, that they are going to be tapped for their networks. They're going to be tapped to bring money in from other individuals. So yes, they are a part of this whole program of individual donors, okay? So Leslie, these are places where you can go, and it's very easy to tap to that. And when we talk, when Phil talks more, we're going to show you an even better graphic of how that just builds out, because we have social media now and all of that. It's just wonderful that identifying and getting your information to prospective donors is much easier nowadays than it was back in the past, okay? So we talked a lot about cultivation and stewardship, okay? What is cultivation? Cultivation is a dialogue between someone at your organization and your prospective donors. Somebody needs to be talking to these folks. You can't just be left in the air. You need a designated person or persons. Okay, the larger the organization is, sometimes they have a full department that works, a full development department. I've worked in development departments where there's 8 people, and I've worked in development departments where there's 1.5 people. Okay, so it depends, but somebody has to be doing that. Okay, also, cultivation and stewardship is about relationship building. That's what Letty was talking about. Folks were rubbed the wrong way. Okay, you got to read your audience. We talk about how you engage individual donors as well. You don't take them when you're first meeting them. We'll talk about that, but you need to really engage them intimately, okay? And get at their likes and what their notions of your programming are, and you talk to them about that. You want to build that relationship. So and you would know if you're rubbing somebody the wrong way too, because you're going to feel that reception going one way, coming back at you. So you'll know how to adjust yourself. But if you're not building that relationship, you'll never know. You'll never know how you landed with that individual. Okay. It's also an opportunity to educate about the benefits of the organization. You're just not going to say, we need money, give us money. Why? What is it about your organization? What is the impact that their money is going to make? Okay. And it's also an opportunity to learn about the donor. Again, you want to build that relationship. What's on their mind? What sets them afire about your organization or your programming? Or what can you find out about them that you can bubble up to the top in your conversation with them to further create that relationship? Okay. And I put down here watering can. You see the picture there. Your donors are like a garden of valuable resources. They feed your organization. They feed the people working in your organization. Okay. That's one thing as a development director, I always say that, we think about, oh, it's the program, but it's also the people running the program. Okay, so it feeds a lot of people. So you want to make sure you're cultivating that garden appropriately, properly. Okay, you need to be touching them at least 3 times a year at minimum. Okay, you have to really cultivate them so that they stay with you and they grow beautifully. When I say grow beautifully, they start as a bud. They may just be giving you a small amount, but as they grow, they yield more. They'll give you more. So you want to make sure you cultivate and you steward them well. Okay. All right. And one thing I have to say this before you ask for money, we're talking about cultivation and stewardship. Before you ask for money, engage them in a non-monetary, non-transactional way. Okay. Meet them in their office or their home. Get to know who they are first before you ask them for money. Get them to come to your organization and volunteer. You want them to get to know your organization intimately. Invite them to events that your organization is hosting. Connect them with your constituency and your programs. And when I say connect them, I'm not talking about dog and pony show, and I'm not talking about exploitation of your constituents. You want them to get to know how their money impacts the programming and the lives, the constituents, your clients' lives. And that you can tell those stories in a way that's uplifting, that brings dignity to your constituency, and then also allows the donor to see, wow, I'm really making a difference with my dollars, with my gift. Okay. And you do that beforehand, before you ask them for the money. They know where that money is going to go. They see how that money is going to help. Okay. You want to engage them first before you ask them for that money. All right. And once you get your donors, you got to put them somewhere so that you can track them and steward them appropriately. So you have to have some kind of CRM, some kind of donor management tracking system. If it's small, you can start with Excel. And as your organization grows and your donor pipeline grows, then you want to probably look into other tracking software. Okay, these are some of the big ones out on the market right now. Some of them are expensive, some of them are medium, some of them are for a smaller budget. Donor Perfect, Razor's Edge, that's a big one. They've been in the field for a long time as a tracking system. You've got Network for Good. Salesforce is a good one. I've used that before in another organization. There's Fundly. And then for maybe some of the organizations here, what might work, if you don't already have one, is someone like Action for Network, which is sort of set up for unions and progressive organizations and the like. A lot of organizations that do organizing would use this software as well. It works well for them. Okay. So are there any questions so far? If not, we'll move on. Okay. So here we are. We're talking about your mailing list. Okay. What's the state of your organization mailing list? That's still your individual donor list. It's also your email list nowadays, because we don't really call it mailing list anymore, because we don't usually send out the mail through snail mail anymore. So we're looking at your email list, your individual giving list. What is the state of that? Who manages it? And what tools do you use? How many people are in that list? Do you know? And how do you use the list? When I say how do you use the list, is it just for annual giving? Do you use it to send out other information, to keep your donors abreast of your programming? So I want to know, how do you use that list? Okay, so we're going to break you up into groups again. You guys are going to talk about that amongst yourselves. You're not going to go for as long a period of time. And then you're going to come back and we're going to talk about how you all are doing that. Okay, and we'll put the questions in the chat for you as well. So if you just give me a moment, I will put you back into groups. Okay. I think everybody's back now. So hopefully you had some robust discussion about the state of your organization's mailing list. Is there anybody who would like to just start and share what you discussed in your group? Anybody?
Well, one of the things that I shared is that
Hi, Sylvia.
For us, the Spanish Community Center, this is something that we're slowly really starting to implement. Currently, we have about 70 people on our mailing list, and many of them are unfortunately donors that we haven't engaged with in the last 2 or 3 years. So we found that even just in this last few months, we've created quarterly newsletters and the annual appeal, and we haven't really received the response that we've wanted to get. And something else that I share is that we do have a program and development communication manager, but the majority of his work is split between grant writing and then actually doing fundraising efforts. So I think that we're getting to the point where it might be necessary to even bring somebody in to focus on that one-on-one engagement with donors, because that's not something that we've really had the opportunity to do.
Can I ask you, is there someone with institutional memory of these older lapsed donors? Is there somebody been around that long?
No, like for me, for example, I'm currently serving as the acting AD. So I've only been in this position for 6 months. And then the accountant and then the program and development manager, he's really only been with the agency for about a year. So this is all fairly new to all of us.
So these lapsed donors that you have, you do have their records on how much they've given in the past and what that pattern was like?
At least up for the last couple of years.
Okay. So it might be an approach like Kathy's might be something where you just handpick a handful of them and you do it in an informal gathering type style, conversational style, and just use them almost as a focus group. And then we'll get to that a little bit. I'll follow up with that a little bit later in just a minute as we talk about this, but you know, all hope is not lost, and there's ways to kind of pull them back in and get them re-engaged.
And
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And Sylvia, in your case, because everybody's fairly new, it's like you can be reintroducing yourself, reintroducing your organization to these donors. It's not like you were there and let them fall off to the wayside and now you're going to pick them up. You weren't there. Right. Most of your staff is new. So it's like you can be introducing. It's a way to introduce your staff to these donors and bring them back into the fold. So you actually have sort of like a hook, a point of entry with these donors. Is that you're all new and you want to re-engage.
Yeah, that newness is a way for you to re-engage. And I also think COVID and everything subsequent to that is also a way to re-engage. Everybody knows that it's been a difficult 2 years, 2 or 3 years. And your job is to talk about how you're being responsive, challenges of all that, and how you've overcome that and are addressing that, and how you're addressing the needs of your community in a really tough time. So that context is another way to maybe re-engage and be very forthcoming about that. Then the idea that, you haven't been as in touch as we probably could have since your last gift, and here's the context for that, but we got a new team. This is what's going on. These are you know what I'm saying? You can spin that around in your way. And I think that trying to gather those folks individually is in a group where you have a spectrum of someone really new and somebody who's really fired up, and you get to talk to them about it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sylvia. Is there anyone else that would like to share?
Yeah, following on what Sylvia said, it strikes me that the COVID really is a great excuse because according to the New York Times, we now have more people in America who have more money than they've had in a long time, surprisingly, especially with inflation, et cetera. But not a lot of people went out during COVID. And we also know that everybody is feeling a little needing rules of the road for how to engage with people. It's a great time. I don't know, it's not the Pollyanna look at it, but it's a great time to be offering something that is something that a lot of people want, and I think, and
Kathy,
you've got stuff.
I think you're really onto something there, in the sense that people have been home. They have been very engaged in media issues, the problems in their community, nationally, internationally, and all that. And that can lead to people feeling powerless. And if you can give them a way of helping, you don't have to be powerless. We can help your community right here by supporting our work. You know, that touches the heartstring, because a lot of people have a mission oriented thing. They want to be a good citizen. They want to help their neighbor. They know maybe they've saved a little, and you can do that. So I think you're absolutely right about, switching the momentum that around and using it to your advantage.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's real. That's not a fake argument. That's
Right.
It's actually real. And people, if you don't have to have a total mea culpa and just fall on your sword, but if you admit, things, people are much more likely to let go of whatever hostility or whatever their feeling was, because you owned up to it.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that, and this is what Charlotte, who's also on this, pointed out to me. You can't think in advance for people. Oh, they're not going to have money for this, or they're not going to do this or that, because people are resilient. They're amazing. That's the first point. The second is, she pointed out to me that we had people who were interested in immigration from just an amazing, diverse group of people that probably could not be in the same room together without starting another Ukraine problem. It's just, and I had my eyes opened. Don't preconceive people. Don't give a preconception on it.
That is absolutely correct. We're in a politically polarized time, so people are put on left or right or up or down, but people are people. And when you talk about these things, people might have there's an old saying, people stand based on where they sit. And, when something is something like abstract, like immigration, that's a big abstract thing. That's not the same thing as my neighbor or the person that I know that does this for me, and their family's endangered and they can't reach their children. And because that's a good guy. That's a good lady. That's not the immigration problem. You see what I'm saying? So personalizing it, people can have a whole different understanding based on that personal relationship and that connection that you make for them.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's funny how people can be.
Definitely. And and situations will have people give where ordinarily they wouldn't have given.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely reading situations and things that you can capitalize on. COVID is one of those that you can use to your advantage right now. So anybody else would like to add how they use their mailing list? We've heard that some folks send out newsletters. Anybody doing anything else to engage their donors? Maybe through social media, anything like that? Well, we're going to be talking about that. So,
Can I make a comment?
Yes, Letty, please.
I just want to, I know this might be a little off cuff, but it's still related to money. I saw a nonprofit once do something so amazing in front of my eyes. And it was at a breakfast. They had a big conference and it was at their breakfast. And they brought in a member of the organization and it was a pitch to the audience on a fundraiser for them while we were in the 2 to 3 hour breakfast with all these key speakers. And what they did that I thought was so genius. I mean, I was just like, crazy. And it was a text campaign that was on the screen with the text number. And the goal was, I believe it was 16,000. And we had a former governor at that time who came in that they hit up. The MC was from Channel 7. And by the time we left, I think it was at 19K. And then that TV station was also going to feature the kid. And then it got wind, and then another TV station a few weeks later got him. The reason I mention this is because the fundraising could be a dual situation for a member, and maybe having an agreement with them beforehand of maybe a split or a portion that stays with the organization to help them keep developing these type of amazing outreaches. But what, who was it? Leslie had mentioned that she just loves in her chat. She loves this thermometer thing. And I was just like, oh, I love that. I've seen that before, where the thermometer shows you the progress of the fundraising.
Yes.
Because it's all about that visual engagement to show people what's the status, where are they at.
That's all great. That's all great stuff. So thank you for that. I think I've definitely been at events like that if I wasn't at that particular one. And it's a great segue into what we're going to talk about because of that instantaneous response you could get now through the technology. So why don't we go to the next slide? Not this one, but you know what we've been talking about all here with this stewardship, cultivation, prospecting. It's a funnel, you know, where we take the leads and we turn them into prospects, and we hopefully make them donors and or volunteers. And all of that is kind of based on the growth of that relationship that we begin and start with them. And it funnels down into what we really want, that bucket of money. So that's how it is in general. It's how fundraising has gone on for eons. But today we're dealing with enhanced technology that lets us do that in a way that can go viral. Just like Kathy, just like you're saying, when you're sitting in that event, and everybody is watching that the person up there make this appeal, but then they can instantly, because of the technology at hand, respond and actually give, and actually be referred to other people, all in kind of one swoop. Something that actually physically was not possible before. People used to put pledge cards under your table at your luncheon and say, now pull those out and blah, 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 but that's a pledge and that money isn't necessarily received right then. And, you know, people don't necessarily fill it out there. But here, that technology thing is very powerful. So if you look at this, this is really to illustrate that now, with our various social media tools, with our email, with Twitter, with Instagram, with all of these things, we are now connected to each other in ways that were not possible. And we can communicate to them virally. Like it can put that out, one person, you call them sneezers, you know, they sneeze and everybody else gets sick. They're just people who are influencers, you know, whether they call themselves that on their resume or whatever. They're influential in their social group, in their political group, in their private groups, their family, all of those things, and they have a extensive contact list. So if you engage them with the heartstrings, that person, potentially you're hitting all of their networks, both public and private, their business contacts, their schools, all of that. People have that in a way and can shoot your message out to them and personalize it in a way that's much more effortless than it used to be. When we did everything by what's called snail mail, and that's been most of my fundraising experience, you know, from just in terms of years, just a mailer, the packaging of the material, all of that had to be bought and paid for and designed. And the way it looked, you know, it was a cumbersome process. And the kind of thing that we can do on our computers now by ourselves, we used to have to send out for that kind of design work. and then have it come back and approve the design work and then send it to a printer and then have that go out. Then you had to mail it. It had to be, if you want to do a bulk mailing or whatever, the stamps, the postage of it, the expense of that, but then the volunteer effort that it might take. If you're sending out 30,000 pieces of mail, regular staff is not going to do that effectively in a nonprofit. You need some help. Now, big nonprofits could send that out, but you can understand the expense, the coordination. That was all very onerous, and it put smaller organizations at a competitive disadvantage then in the marketplace of getting these responses out. Now you can do all of that with a touch of a button, essentially. And it, because of the speed of it and the connectivity and the ability for each person along that line to personalize a message to particular people. And here we want to really talk about like the magic of the subject line. Because, you know, everybody gets these emails. And after a while, you know, it's unopened email after unopened email. But if you have something compelling that's there, and that tagline, a person is more likely to open that up. And particularly, I think it skews demographically too, because younger people don't even use snail mail. And mail just pops up and you think of that junk mail in your email folder, but the junk mail you get from your mailbox out in front of your house is full of stuff you never look at. You discard, it's advertised, I don't want that, Here, a person to function has to open up their email. And so there you are, there's your opportunity. And then you can connect it all. And again, your newsletters, all of these communications are different ways to touch then a whole group of people virally in a way and share that pretty effectively. And remember, in those newsletters, you always are making an ask. Yes, you are lifting up stories. And yesterday, we got some interesting feedback about this lifting up of stories when you're dealing with populations that maybe a lot of people don't think of positively. And I think we got to a little of that today. But the stories coming from an actual person is very compelling. And, you know, for some groups that don't have like big client bases or whatever, it might be hard to find that, but you can find, and usually if you can consult your program staff, they can lift up individuals that are great spokesmen. Like overall, I've seen this used very effectively by organizations, both raising money from foundations and individuals in group events like that, where there's just somebody that's charismatic, or they have a very interesting story. If they can't put that across, you can feature them in your newsletter, feature them on your website. That story can be emblematic of everything you're trying to say about what your organization does. It can be typified in a person. And again, that touches the heartstrings. It makes it accessible, and you're likely to get a lot of bang for the buck that way. So that's how you keep your content relevant and making people want to open it up. Next slide, please. So the next kind of understanding of that then is crowdfunding. Again, another kind of way of fundraising that has taken appeals that we used to have to mail and do all this thing to, and it puts them together in a easily digested and looked at form electronically that allows people to respond to it. You can put your story there. They can send it out and be your ambassador. So everyone you send it out to can be your ambassador. And let me go back to Kathy's small group. So imagine you've got those 5 or 6 donors, lapsed or new or whatever, and you've persuaded them and you've evangelized and they're excited about it. They can be a powerful voice And then if they got an appeal for you for a crowdfunding source, they'll send it out to all of their people. And if they explicitly ask those people to send it out to 10 more people, because this is so important, it's a self-collected group. I know you care about the things that I care about and that kind of thing. You're much more likely to have success that way. So the crowdfunding can be combined then with this idea, your database and this viral nature to give you a lot of bang for your buck. As with all of the things we're talking about, if you're starting from scratch, it's slow. It's not going to be explosive results. You're building, though, the groundwork, the relationships, the enthusiasm. And over time, as you water this garden with this crowdfunding kind of concept and nurture it, it will grow, it will yield. And you just have to stay steady. And with the watering, the newsletters, the information, the acknowledgement, the thank you, that whole cycle. And that's how you build the actual crowd that will fund you. So I'm interested, is anybody with their organizations currently done any crowdfunding with their organization? And just anybody who wants to just volunteer. So if you look at, could you go to the next slide? So the Civic Lab is a nonprofit itself. And so we've done crowdfunding and had a very successful crowdfunding around our book, Chicago's Not Broke. The one we talked about in our intro. So the $10,000 that we needed to, publish and, design and publish and get that project off the ground was done through an Indiegogo campaign. And so, can you go into that? Can we go down on that one? So if you go onto the page, and I was interested in the discussion about the thermometer, it's very kind of similar to the thermometer thing where you can see the campaign goals, the different levels of giving in that thing. There's a nice video you can embed in that. And there are different platforms. So that Indiegogo was good for us. Can you go down one slide? There are different platforms. Does anybody use any of these platforms? GoFundMe. There are a number of them that you can resource. So,
sorry, we haven't used GoFundMe, but we have had people do Facebook, and
Okay.
we've packet of materials if someone's doing kind of, it's my birthday, I want to raise
yes.
dollars for the immigration project. So if we see those, we'll reach out and thank them and then give them information and materials and then kind of make them little mini crowdfunders for us. And that's been low level for us in terms of resources, but a good extra bonus.
Yes, and that grows over time. Now I'm interested in that because are you identifying someone you have in your database and you have their Facebook contact and you know what their birthdays are? Was this a suggestion to them? It was a suggestion to your people in your database that if you have this, was that something that was organic and this person just did it, or was this part of a strategy? Because that's a very interesting strategy.
It started organically. We saw a couple different people do birthday fundraisers for us that we were networked with, but we didn't ask them. And then we realized, oh, this could be a source of easy kind of low-level revenue. So then we asked our board members on their birthday to do it. And then the more people you see, if one or two people in a network do a birthday fundraiser and then they're hearing about it, and then there's someone we didn't know who's in their networks who will do one.
See, that's
So
awesome. That's
we don't,
the viral quality.
yeah. And then we realized, oh, okay, we can develop a little packet of resources and send that to
Yeah.
them. And
So
then
if
the
you
next,
have the
I love your
packet ready,
idea.
you have the thing that they're going to see ready when they
Right.
do.
Yeah, I love the idea of maybe reaching out to some of our more social media savvy supporters and knowing when their birthday are, reaching out to them and ahead of time. I think that would be maybe the next step for it.
Yeah, cherry picking those followers, people with big, I mean, on my friends list, I have thousands, and there are people like that. And if you can get them engaged, and then the fact, so if we're combining some of the things we heard on this call, you get a small group, you pick your 5, 6 best influencers based on the size of their followings, and maybe you get them together and ramp up this strategy with them in a very coordinated, strategic fashion. That could be very powerful. And a group like that, you might not have to be in a certain place. You could do a Zoom meeting like this, since you already know that's kind of their methodology of working. You could do this in a Zoom meeting and actually have some of that stuff executed while you're in the meeting. I mean, because it's possible to go in and out. So that's the other thing, is the speed with which you can get these results is much different than it used to be back in the horse and buggy days, when everything had to go, and all of that. And even personalizing things is easier than writing out. You used to have to write something out, and sometimes that's a good touch. Sometimes you need high touch and high tech. You still want that personalization, but you can personalize emails and little messages and things, and you just want to keep that contact. So when we go into, then it's very analogous to special events. A couple of special events were mentioned here already. I'm wondering, does anybody here been to a special event, designed a special event, just not even digitally, but just a regular, a golf outing or a gala or benefit concert? It could even be something like a bake sale or, any of that thing. So if anybody has had any of those kind of things, just, you can say something in the chat and let us know if you've actually been involved, not even just in your organization itself, but in other ways. And maybe there's very effective ones you've seen. But the point is, with each of them, an important thing is to define the intent. Specifically, if you're an organization that is very new to having any kind of a special event, or very new to individual giving, you might not be expecting a really big financial benefit from the first time you do it, but it may have a strategic friend raiser kind of quality. That friend raising, bringing into your group people who weren't there before, preferably they're brought in by a peer, someone that trusts them and brings them to. That intent of that meeting might not be for them to just write a check, but it might be to familiarize yourself. Or if it's something in a street festival or whatever, yes, you expect to get some donations, but a lot of it is about letting the community know you exist. Maybe letting them hear from some success stories and that kind of thing. So defining the intent will help you from being too hard about yourself if you don't make grand financial goals at the beginning. Does that make sense? You want to have like a kind of a double bottom line when it comes to that. And that's what your objective is all about. And then you identify your target audience with that same kind of understanding. Is this all of your donors? Is it new people? Is it a new community that you're working in? All of that kind of stuff will guide how you create the event. And then obviously you have to do a budget. Again, one of the real benefits to doing a lot of this stuff now is it's much more cost effective to do it now than it used to be. Like, for instance, can you go to the next slide? If you look at this budget, this is a very kind of standard kind of things you would think about expenses for a you know, kind of an analog, you know, in-person event. And you can see all of these things have been revolutionized. I mean, your budget is much more controllable and smaller because you don't nowadays on an online event or something like that, because it's, you know, you don't have the catering. You don't have to feed people, give them drinks. You don't have to deploy a lot of staff in the same way. You'll need volunteers, but in a way it could be a lot less onerous because they can do it at their house. They don't have to come out to a place and do a thing. And all of the coordination of that, if anybody has done that, is a lot of work. So this streamlines it in quite a bit of ways. And again, the things we're talking about, printing and rentals of equipment. I work for an organization as a fundraiser where our big gala every year, we went and rented this big tent that was out in the parking lot. It's this huge thing so that we could have food under there and all that. That was an enormous expense in days. It took days to make the tent and put it up and the lighting and all. You just don't have to do that in the same kind of way. You don't need security and all of the different kinds of things. So part where people are going to park, all of that. And now, again, in the wake of COVID, people are much more comfortable and familiar with doing things online and seeing concerts online and watching things online in lives and using that live and then connecting back to the organization in terms of what you can do technologically is really an awesome thing. So all of that, to me, represents kind of the advantage to working now. And all of those kind of events that we were talking about, be it well, you know, concerts, lectures, you could do silent auctions virtually. All of these things can be done virtually now. And I'm gonna put a link in the chat, which is 25 virtual fundraiser ideas, 25 virtual special events. So translating that, and if anybody has been anything like that, I'd like to know that. I've attended things like conferences, concerts, all of these that are, you know, I think in Chicago, there's this organization, Hot House, is really good at doing fundraiser, live event, concert kind of things. And I think there's going to be a lot of innovation in that way. And maybe some of that innovation will come from some of you all on these calls. If you've got relationship with arts groups, with, you know, maybe your board members or somebody's an artist, or different ways. It could even be online cooking classes. Any kind of way you could think might engage my particular audience in a way that's like a special event where we can get them and, you know, do that kind of thing without that other cost, is again part of this relationship building that's so key. So I think the virtual thing helps mitigate what would have traditionally been the cost of doing special events, and really the thing that prevented organizations from even considering them, because they say, well, how can we do all that? And a lot of ways now, I think it's creativity, and especially using younger people, the people that this is their second language of technology, maybe as volunteers to help you with some of that stuff, is another engagement tool. It's just, I think this is really the future. I don't think it's going all the way back. I think you'll always have some of those in-person events, but I think this is going to rule for a long time. So if we look at then if we just want to recap some of the best practices that we could talk about, all the areas that we've talked about today, it's about setting achievable goals. It's about forging lasting relationships. It's embracing flexibility. We might have to do this one way. We might have to go online. We might have to use a hybrid. It's about understanding your supporters. And how do you do that? Through dialogue, through asking them. It's like your sessions with them are a way to educate them about your community and the work or whatever, but it's also to be educated by this prospect, by this donor, about what they see and what their priorities are, so you can meet them where they are. I think that it's very important then that we invest in the online giving software to track and manage everything from when a person is a prospect to progressing them along the chain to a donor and a retained donor, and maybe eventually a donor that's a major donor, as we'll talk in other things. But you've got to make that funnel that we showed, you got to make that digital at this point, or you're just not going to be competitive. So
can I ask, I answered a question in the chat. They were asking about which CRMs have I used or do I like? I've used Donor Perfect, and that's great for a mid-sized organization. I've used Razor's Edge, huge. That you can put in upwards of thousands of folks into a Razor's Edge CRM. And also I've used Salesforce. I was intrigued the way the development department used the Salesforce for development. But I would say it's a little convoluted. So if you don't know what you're doing, that one's a little, but I would say,
and the Salesforce is the platform from some other kind of
other business. Yeah.
So there's some specifically around nonprofits.
Yes.
And nonprofit theaters or nonprofit, different enterprises.
So Fundly, Donor Perfect, Razor's Edge for sure has sort of set the standard in the arena, and then folks have sort of built off of that. But there's so many.
If you don't currently use one, you can get demos of each of those, so you can do it. All of them are going to require some staff training, and they'll do that. They can do that online or whatever. So all of that's to be considered. If you're starting just from scratch, whatever, you can try to do things with Excel spreadsheets and others, but that's just not going to give you the customization. We've talked about things like Constant Contact for email. There are other kinds of like email services that will automate some of that stuff for you, but you can still customize it. So there's really, you can literally Google it and you'll get a lot of list of them.
They have lists of they'll tell you like the best top 20 or the top 10, and you can look at them and
look at the reviews. Definitely look at the reviews and see how user-friendly they are and how robust they are.
Donor Perfect is good though. I'm gonna put that out there. If you're a middle, small to mid-sized organization, Donor Perfect is fine. And it can
it's one of that and Razor's Edge, those are the OGs.
Those are the good ones, yeah.
And I see somebody raised $380,000 from GoFundMe. And see, that's awesome. They use it from a vendor, ice cream vendor.
Yeah, Philip, it was this man, something had happened to the daughter. I think she was ill, and then his boss, so in Spanish it's called paletero. So he would sell the ice creams in the little cart.
Yeah.
And then the boss went online and just did this, and within 24 hours that was raised. And I just thought that was a great story that people should look up. There's another one, but I can't find it right now, of a nonprofit that has done some massive fundraising because of the emotional outreach.
That's right. And not assuming what an outreach to a person might lead to. You don't know what resources they might be connected to. There's a very famous fundraising story about a lady she never made more than $20,000. She was a low-income worker, and when she was older and she passed away, she bequeathed her money to this organization, nonprofit organization, and it was a large six-figure gift, just like that. And this lady lived very modestly, never made any money, but she saved everything. She didn't have any family. And because this organization was like what they were to her personally, they ended up giving all this money, getting all this money from her. So these relationships, you just never know. And as we're going through a change in generation and a shift from generation and wealth, that's going to be even more important. The older folks who might end up being really good contacts for you. So I
definitely use that social media. Don't go to sleep on that. Facebook is awesome because I've even done the birthday giving.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Also, Giving Tuesday is another one. Like I said, we can go deeper into, but Giving Tuesday, what is that? The Tuesday after Thanksgiving, you have Black Friday, you have Cyber Monday, and you have Giving Tuesday. That's a great one to capitalize on. A lot of individuals go on and look at different causes to give to. Make sure your organization gets registered with Giving Tuesday. And then folks can come on. It's almost like the crowdfunding. Folks will come on, look at your organization. If they like it, they'll give to it. Lots of people make money that way.
Absolutely. And given the kind of work you all do, it's in the news a lot. Different aspects of it might show up in the news in any given week, right? So again, you use that opportunity to leverage maybe this press that maybe has people asking questions, and you pull that back in to the relevance of your organization that's, dealing with immigrant issues. And I think that's, again, so it's like, the key to all of this is that you have a dedicated staff or staff members that are going to own this process. You can see a lot of follow-up is needed, a lot of due diligence and all that. So it has to be at least a part of a person's job or a dedicated job, or something that a staff person can do in conjunction with, a group of volunteers or something that they can manage. So it's not what they have to do day to day, but they can check on those people. But these responsibilities have to be, as we've talked about, they have to be up on a calendar, and we're going to be regular about this. And this is who it's dedicated to, and these are the deliverables, and here's where we get the results. So does all of that make sense? Cool. Well, we're running close to the end of our time. Please, we're going to put this link in the chat. It's really important that we get these. They really help us to calibrate and improve on the way we deliver this stuff. So, Ahmed, you got something to say about that? I know.
I'm sorry. I was reading the chat. I was literally reading the chat as you were talking.
So I'm talking about the evaluations and how much they help us.
Oh, please
get better.
It does. We definitely look at them. It strokes my ego. No, I'm just joking. We definitely want to know how well we've done so that we know what we need to do for the next ones coming up. Yes, it does stroke my ego if I do well. So please let us know, because we definitely adjust and adapt our trainings accordingly. Letty, also, thank you very much. She put the link for Razor's Edge and Donor Perfect into the chat. So please,
awesome.
Take a look at that as well. That's what
I'm do their demos and get a feel for it. And their sales staffs are usually very helpful and will do an online Zoom demonstration and, kind of walk through it with, key staff. So it's a really great, and again, another development that technology has made easier.
And with these databases, you don't only just have to put individuals, you can put your foundations in there, your corporate giving folks in there. You build it out with all of your funders and donors. All of that can go in there.
It's a very powerful, robust tool.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So please take this last 5 minutes to fill out the evaluation. Just put in the chat that you've done it, and bid us adieu as you do
But
that.
it's really helpful. And then, if there are other kinds of subjects you'd like us to touch on, some elaboration on something, please feel free to, you have our emails to reach out, and to the extent that we can, we will, help you with that.
And please join us next week. We have our fundraising lab coming up where we're going to be touching upon the grant writing workshop that we did, this individual fundraising, grassroots fundraising, and we're going to be putting a lab together for the 17th, Thursday. So
That's right.
want to see everybody there.
So that link is now in the chat. And in anticipation of that, if you could come to that meeting with your mission statement, because what we're going to do is show how to change what can sometimes be complicated mission statements into something that you can use to communicate very quickly. We call them elevator speeches. How you can convert that. We're going to convert some, and maybe we'll concur. If you want to have yours converted, we can look at that. But it's very powerful, both in individual giving and when you have to talk to foundation people or other stakeholders or other leaders.
Yes,
So,
Betty. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Phil. Were you done?
no,
Betty had raised her hand.
so you want to do that one? Go ahead.
Betty, I think you're muted. There we go. Uh-oh. You still, wait, hold on. Let me unmute you.
Okay, quick
there you
question. When you guys do your next training, one thing that I'm encountering and I'm seeing for a lot of my relationships, clients, other nonprofits, is a training on federal grant applications and submittal. The nasty, crazy portals and trauma drama they cause us to go through with grants.gov and now with the DUNS number and the whole system process changing with the federal government. I don't know what's going to happen there. That would be an amazing one because we are all like, we got PTSD each time we want to go
like
for it, but we're like, yeah.
I know, you're like, ah. So absolutely. Having gone through that several times now, I can do that stuff pretty much in my sleep. It doesn't give me the nightmares that it used to, where you're on needles and pins, making sure everything goes in before you can even submit your proposal. Yes.
No, I was on one last week with by National. We were on one or 2 weeks ago, and then I asked a question to SBA, the head of the person who was, whatever, talking to us. And I said, hey, is there training on this? Is there whatever? And he was like, no, and then pushed on. And I was like, no, like that is not fair, because then the little nonprofits or other entities that want to get in, they don't have a chance.
Right.
And then it just goes back to the same fat cats.
Yeah, because there is a method. There absolutely is a method and a process to follow when you're doing federal grants. It's not for the faint of heart. I'm just going to put it out there. But once you've done it, then the mystery is gone and you can do it. So absolutely. And not, that there's the federal grant system, and even the city now has their system that if you want to avail yourselves of their grant process, you have to go through a similar process in order to be able to be even viable to submit a proposal. So absolutely, lady, thank you for that, because that's something that I have been tossing around. I'd love to do a hands-on lab where everybody is going through that, and you can just you don't have to be filling out, getting ready to apply for a proposal in order to get your SAM and your DUNS number. You need to do all that. A lot of times that's when you're going after a federal grant, it forces you. That's when people start to do it, but you can do it ahead of time. So we should definitely, Letty, we will talk to them about that.
Yeah, I think that is such an extensive and a kind of specialized thing that we would have to design something in addition to what we already have planned. But I think that given everything you said, it is an essential one. Mm-hmm. And pretty much everything that we've done up to this point has been at the 101 level. I mean, because these are all things that we could go over line by line. Mm-hmm. And so for the next one, again, if we want to also touch on some of the special events ideas that people may have done and the online ideas. So if you have an idea for a fundraiser, a special event, either online or not, just come with that idea and maybe we can explore it together. But this next session is really designed for a lot of dialogue, a lot of nuts and bolts. I really like that last one. But I think it's just so meaty that it would be kind of tough to add it to what's already. It really deserves its own.
Yeah, its own lab. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but thank you for that. And this is exactly what we need. This is really helpful to us to design future programs.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
So I think that brings us right to 11 o'clock, you guys. Awesome job. All of us.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope everybody has done the evaluation, and we look forward to seeing everybody on Thursday. Okay, so hopefully you can come back.
See you next
So
Thursday.
Take care. Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend.